right. So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We had some difficulties, but you made it, so it's amazing. And so my name is Klára, as Jan said, I'm Programs Associate at Students for Liberty, and yeah, I'll be your moderator for this session today. So we gathered here as Syria stands at a crucial turning point, and we are very curious what will happen and why happened something like this and why it happened now. So today we aim to explore how pro-liberty activists can play a role in sharing and brightening future. And we couldn't have more amazing guests than Amjad Aun, who is originally from Syria and immigrated to Germany, where he became national coordinator, team leader for Team Germany. And Amjad is also working as an economist advisor at Ideas Beyond Borders and is PhD candidate at Ilmenau University. So today with Amjad, we'll go over various topics, such as casual life for people who are still living in Syria, also different political standpoints from world leaders, and much more. So Amjad, thank you for being here, and let's dive right into it. So my question first that would be, can you describe the current state of Syria? What is it for normal people and how it looks like?
So first of all, thank you very much, Clara. Thank you everyone for being here. So right now, the status quo, I would say, is ambiguity, uncertainty. There is happiness, of course. We just toppled a dictatorship that has ruled for almost half, not almost, more than half a decade, half a century, actually, 53 years. And people are happy for that. The situation was very bad economically. There was no investments, livelihoods, like people were struggling just to be able to support their lives, basic needs, basic necessities. Now people have hope for the first time. They are looking forward. However, we need also to acknowledge that the challenge has just begun. It's not the end. We're not there yet. And I wouldn't say that this is a specific case for Syria. If you look at all revolutions in the world, even the American Revolution led by George Washington, if you look at the French Revolution, any other revolution, it was not that today we topple down the dictatorship, tomorrow we have Beverly Hills. It's never like this. It takes time. But what Syria has managed to do is that they have shaken the status quo. There was an equilibrium. And if someone has ever read The Concept of Preference Falsification by Timur Kuran, Duke's professor at Duke's University, he mentions that people seem to falsify their preferences because they are scared. So what we have seen in Syria is basically a very amazing example that Assad basically lasted almost 13 years, and then he was toppled in almost 10 days, which is funny. And the main reason is that people, like everyone, even the ones who were fighting in his army, they were getting very low salary, less than $20 a month. They were not able to support their lives, their families. So there is no actual incentive to fight. So they just like were, no, I'm not gonna fight. That's it. Whatever happens, happens. I think I will not sacrifice my life for anything anymore. So what happens is that people is just for once altogether stopped falsifying their preferences and they just say that we don't want this guy. All of a sudden, which is amazing. It was very funny. So there was no big fights going on, which is nice. So no more Syrian bloodshedding, Syrians fighting against other Syrians. But now, when these things happen, now the challenge begins. So that's what's going on right now. Celebrations are everywhere. People are very happy. There are some issues, of course, and as in any revolution, if you look at it, after they topple the dictator, what happens is that there's some sort of chaos. There are revenge killings sometimes, homicide, stealing, theft, whatever. It's not good. People, of course, hate it, but I would say this is at like until now it's at the minimum. So until this very moment, it's not systematic. As long as it is not systematic, it's good because we also need to not forget that HTS, Hayat Tahrir Sham, is designated as a terrorist group. So they are Islamists and they are transnationalists. Even when, if you look at Jolani, when he entered the Umayyad Mosque, which is a very famous location in Damascus, historical one, his speech was, "This is a victory for the Islamic nation." So it was a bit worrying that why didn't you address the nation, the Syria, that has been struggling, and said you have been transnational. So we will see how these things unfold. People would say that he is trying to change his rhetoric. U.S. Mentioned, like Anthony Blinken did say, the statements are positive, but we need to wait for actions.
Okay, amazing. And so you have already touched on who is the driving force behind the revolution. Can you just give us a scope, actually, who consists these groups of, like, who is behind it? We know it from the social media and media in general as a rebels. So who are these groups?
So there have been many groups fighting in Syria, which is funny. It all started with some Syrian fighters, those who basically ditched the army. They back then in 2011, 2012, they formed something called the Syrian Free Army. Then there were radicals flowing in, basically created what is called ISIS.
Mhm.
And those, they had very different ambitions. So the Syrian Free Army was fighting against Assad because they wanted to gain freedom. ISIS, they wanted to start a khilafah, so very different ideologies. So there was many incidents in which the Syrian Free Army FSA was also fighting against ISIS. So there was like three fighting against each other: Assad's army, Syrian Free Army FSA, and ISIS. And then many other groups started cropping up. So if you look at Jolani's, at his CV, he's been in Iraq. He joined ISIS there. He was captured by the US, and then he managed to trick the even the Iraqis because they used to have fake IDs, and he had an ID saying that he's an Iraqi. But what the US did basically is that they employed Iraqi people to define or identify those people according to dialect, because even though we all speak Arabic, we have very different dialects.
Okay, very
He,
interesting.
he managed to pass this, which is funny. And then he was released. He came to Syria. He started what he calls Al Nusra Front, which was, let's say, a bit less extreme than ISIS, but still extreme. And then after many years, he went to Idlib and he started, like he said, he severed his relations with Al Qaeda, and then he established something called the right now Hayat Tahrir Sham, HTS, and which is also a bit less extreme than the formal. So now we're waiting to see. He seems a very pragmatic person. I would say no one knows because according to some podcasts I've been hearing, some articles I've been reading, he's extremely pragmatic, that he keeps on changing colors. So one day he's like extremely right wing. The other day, all of a sudden, he speaks about institutionalism in a very not the greatest way, but I mean, I would say it's way better than Assad, of course. It's funny, but it seems like he has read few papers from Why Nations Fail of Darren Acemoglu, and all of a sudden he just uses some of these words, sometimes out of context. But I mean, it's a good start. If they know these books, it's a good start.
Okay, good. All right. And so if I were to ask you what regions are left under Assad's control, are there still any, or which areas are controlled by other groups? Is it somehow divided at the moment, or what are the Kurdish doing? And so what is going on currently geographically?
So, what is under Assad's control is probably his apartment in Moscow right right now. That's the only thing under his control. That's good. He could stay there forever. Uh, it would be amazing if he just would give back the money he has stolen from from the state. But yeah, there's nothing under his control at this moment. At this moment, we have two big factions, which is HTS and all the factions that are unified under HTS, Hayat Tahrir Sham. And then we have the SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces. Those are so the areas of SDF, they are not only Kurds. It's like majority Kurds, but there are other factors as well in the population there. They are supported mainly by the international coalition led by the US. They have two branches, the military branch and the political branch. They have, let's say, better rhetoric when it comes to democracy, pluralism, decentralization, liberties. So right now they are in negotiations between the two. I hope for a pluralistic solution because we do need this pro-democracy voice to be powerful. Because right now what's going on is that under former regimes areas like the HTS areas right now, activists who are pro-secular Syria, pro-pluralism, who want democracy, free elections, they don't have military power. So it's about the benevolence of HTS to agree.
Mhm.
But the Kurds, the SDF, like the Syrian Democratic Forces, they have actual military force, so they are on a better ground when it comes to negotiations. So I think something in between like this could balance things, and I hope it works. It's I wouldn't say it's one fully optimism, 100% optimism, but it's cautious optimism. But it's not pessimism until this very moment. It's not pessimism.
All right. And so when we take a look on normal people's life, the UN estimates that over 90% of Syrians live in poverty and over 10 million people rely on humanitarian aid. How did this happen, simply put?
How did this happen? Well, if anyone has read Why Nations Fail by Darren Acemoglu, he makes a contrast between the institutions that were cropping up in North America and the institutions that in South that were emerging in South America by the Spanish invasion there. So he mentions that some institutions are pro-development, pro-prosperity, pro-growing, and others are they just extract. And that's what Assad was basically doing. So the institutions he was implementing at the end were very extractive, just trying to extract all kind of wealth that he could. For example, if a Syrian wants to enter Syria, like my country, I want to enter inside my own country, I need to exchange 100 US dollars at the borders. And not the black market price, but actually the central bank price, and the gap is very high. So it's basically stealing money. Additionally, if you want to renew your passport, which is not the greatest passport, doesn't let you enter anywhere, probably 20 countries in the world without a visa, then you need to pay almost 700 euros. Um, uh, so you can see. And then in Syria, there were checkpoints for his brother's brigade, the 4th Brigade. And that was also very extractionist. So whenever you go through them, let's say you're a merchant, because we have the industrial area in Syria, the main industrial area is the city of Aleppo. The The and then we have Damascus, which is mostly political and trade area. So usually, if you have a factory in Aleppo, let's say you make shoes, after you put the cost, you make small margin of profit, then you can sell it, let's say for $10, for example. And then I want to expand, so I want to enter new markets, so other cities basically. I want to go to Damascus, I want to send to Iraq, Turkey, whatever. Then the checkpoints, like moving the products from Aleppo to Damascus, the price in Damascus after adding these was not Aleppo. Aleppo is a city, it's the second largest city in Syria. If you want to send them there, then the price would be almost $60. So it's like 600% more. And then when they reach there, the place, people cannot buy it because they're already making $20, $30 a month. So what are you expecting? So these kind of things, it's like let's say some kind of whirlpool whatever you do is just sucks in. So there's no way to make profit. There's no way to make anything. Nowadays, some livelihoods products like bread, for example, the shortages have stopped. Eggs and potatoes, they are now actually very cheap.
Mhm.
Those were already produced in big masses because it was the main food for the army. Now they are being directed into the market for civilians to buy. The prices are very low for two things. They are already mass produced. Second, there are no checkpoints that were taking tariffs. Well, illegal tariffs, because we are not talking about taxes taken by the government that is going to, let's say, taxes money going to government pay through coming back through government expenditure. No, it was going directly to the Fourth Brigade, to the pocket of his brother. So this
Mhm.
money was not coming back in any kind of investment.
Okay, very interesting. So throughout the dictatorship, a lot of people have fled. And how many people are coming back actually at the moment?
There are no estimations yet. What I have is just some reports from friends who are monitoring their friends and their surroundings of people. So I would say majorly people are coming back from Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are coming back from Turkey. There have been some incidents in Turkey, some issues. So many people were like, "Okay, I will just flee." So that's one thing. I know some people who are already big investors. They are Syrians. They are like basically Syrian Americans, but they own some factories in Syria. And right now, it's because they were not allowed to go there during Assad's time. So now they are going there. I wouldn't say they are going there to reside there, but they are going there because now there's an opportunity. Markets are opening, so they are bringing stuff like, let's say, raw materials, new sources of raw materials to produce. One of them has a company for what is it called, like this red meat,
Mm-hmm.
and the prices have fallen down by almost 60% because now they can actually bring raw materials without the tariffs that the Fourth Brigade was taking from them, and that's an info I got through talking to them. But until this very moment, there are no, let's say, credible reports by big institutions or NGOs that put all the numbers together.
Okay, interesting. And do we have any data on how many people have fled over the time?
According to each country's data, so I know in Turkey there's almost 3 point something million refugees. In Germany there's almost less than a million, 780,000, something like this. So I would say and Jordan, Lebanon, of course, I would say there's a big number. The number exceeds 6 million Syrian citizens who are refugees.
Mm-hmm.
And the number is also very high inside Syria because we also need to address there are IDPs, internally displaced people, who have left their cities and went to other cities seeking refuge. Now those people are also going back to their cities, going back to their lives, trying to uh, restructure, rebuild, or start their businesses because there's now, I would say, there is um, no state in the let's say 100% meaning of a state. There's still some sort of anarchism going on. But at this time, there is a big margin of freedom. It could be that it's actually given, or it could be that HTS is just too busy right now with consolidating other things, so they cannot fully control everything. But I would say this few months, if we get few months of freedom, livelihoods will be pretty much improved.
That sounds amazing and promising. All right. Now I would like to move on to foreign powers, if you will. And so one of the important foreign powers was Russia, and Russia has played a crucial role in keeping Assad in power since 2015. And so, what has been its impact militarily and economically?
Could you repeat the last part because my internet cut and
Okay. So, what has been Russia's impact militarily and economically since 2015?
Okay, in terms of military, of course, it had very huge impact. That's for sure. We have seen that Assad, without international forces, those are two, basically Iran and Russia, he has no power, which also tells us that even the people under his regime, they are not happy about him because they did not even try to fight back solely. The Russian impact, well, now that we have some issues that he owes those two countries a lot of money, billions of dollars. And people right now that we don't know legally, can we just say, well, you supported him, so he should pay. It's not us. Sorry. So we don't know. It's the work of lawyers and legislators who know more about these things. I hope that we don't need to pay, but let's see. The impact was huge. Economically, it was not great because many of Syria's resources were taken by as Russian investments. The way they cut shares was very much also like just taking almost everything, so nothing was left for the Syrian people, and we did not have a say in this. So, I mean, when something is related to sovereignty, I think the people should have at least a referendum, say their opinion, what other parties are thinking about. Did we get tenders from other countries, other companies? Is it the best actually, or is it given through nepotism or through this foreign influence? So there are many questions to be asked because during Assad's era, there was zero transparency. We don't know anything. So we know nothing where for example, a lot of money that comes from the oil, we don't know where it's going. A lot of money that goes into budget. We don't know what they are spending on. Everything is secretive, and you are not allowed to ask any question. If you ask any question, so this like treason or something like very bad, you go to prison. So people don't know a lot of things, and now we're hoping like even let's not go far. There are prisons. We just found out because of this. So there were underground prisons. No one ever heard about it. Now Syrians like in Damascus, some of them were crying, were saying like the whole time I was walking on the streets and beneath me there were people being tortured. That's scary. That is actually scary. You have no idea. You have literally no idea that beneath you there are people like it could be your loved one, your family member, whatever, in beneath you, and you don't know where they are. There is no transparency, even if they could like imprison someone without trial. If you go and ask, and this is something I know because some of our friends in Syria, that happened to them. They were taken and they just disappeared. And their parents or their family, their friends, we try to ask, even the secret services, whatever, where are they? And everyone would just tell you, I don't know. I've never heard of this name. So they don't report. So that's a big problem, of course. And yes, so basically that is the Russian influence. It was not a force of actual good. It was a force of evil. Right now, the Russians still have their two bases on the coastal area. We're still waiting to see because now they are negotiating with the new government gonna be to see if they can keep their bases or not. I have no idea if there's an international, let's say, agreement on what happened, so they get this as a share or not. But I mean, even if they get them, we still have a very large coastal area, so it's possible to build other airports and other ports, seaports. So it's not a big issue, I would say, as long as they just don't intervene in the political process that's going to happen, which is scary because it's famous that they do. We have seen this, for example, in Romania very recently. So the impact was not the greatest economically. As I said, it was very bad. I would say just two friends giving or two friends being nepotist a lot and just helping each other. That's it. But hopefully the future would be better. There's one issue right now that minorities feel threatened sometimes. This is also an issue that needs to be addressed because, as I said, the factions they have different like HTS it's made from different factions, and there are different levels of extremism. Some of those very extremists, they are like, let's say, extremely jihadis. So for them, like, let's fight the infidels. That's scary for minorities. For others, they have discipline. So that's the thing. But the problem is if you're a minority member and you see someone of them, they all tell you we are HTS. So until this very moment, there is no systematic way to recognize, should I be scared or not? Is this one of the disciplined one who does their work, or is it one who wants to kill? So that's a problem. There have been many incidents reported in multiple cities, also in home city. Sometimes they fake accusations. They take people as they are taking them for a trial, and the next day they find the corpses of the people. So basically, no trial, no court, nothing.
At the moment,
HTS is sorry.
at the moment, currently.
Hmm.
Okay.
Exactly, and at this moment, HTS is stating that those are individual acts. It's not systematic. I hope that it is like this because if it's systematic, it could lead to a big problem. So we don't want to start a new civil war, minorities having guns against others, and that would just increase the struggle and suffering.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, the imprisoned people who are being found about, are they being released? Because I can imagine that most of them were politically imprisoned.
Yes, exactly. There were some, I would say, I do get it that when you're doing it, when you're opening the prison, you're happy, you're very excited. But there are actual people who are criminals who were there and they have been also released. So this could be an issue in the future. But let's see. I mean, at least the joy of it probably was worth it. I don't know.
Hopefully. Okay. And are other countries filling the gap since Russians have left? Hopefully, a bit at least. So Iran has very big interest in having strong presence in Syria. Turkey remains heavily involved. The United States maintains a smaller role in Syria. So where do you see these countries heading on from now?
So right now, things are also, as I said, ambiguous. The thing is, when we look at HTS, we need to also to recognize or identify that they have fighters who are foreign fighters.
Mhm.
They're not Syrians coming like jihadis coming from other countries, other places of the world. Now, those aren't a problem. Like if we assume, let's by assumption, just give him the benefit of the doubt that Jolani decides to actually be a political figure. He's not into extremism. He wants to start a democracy and run for presidency, wins or not, whatever happens. But the problem is that you have those fighters, so they need a solution. If you decide to give them, let's say, the citizenship, then this will be a big issue for the Syrian passport in the future because now you have thousands of jihadis with a Syrian passport, and then the security checks and the background checks need to be increased for Syrians, and that's the price all the population would pay. We don't want to do this. We don't want that. What is the solution? I think it needs to be an international solution. I think each country should deal with its citizens who joined them. It shouldn't be the Syrians' problem because we don't even have the resource. Syria doesn't even have the resources to deal with that. So it should be each country to find a way to deal with them, hopefully. So I would say until now, we can see that there are some countries who are pushing for the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2254. HTS is kind of against it. What HTS is saying is legally correct that there is no regime anymore. It has fallen, so the whole resolution makes no sense. But there are parts of the resolution that talk about the political process, and we do want a process under the umbrella of the United Nations and the international community, because we need that whatever government that comes emerges from this political process. We want it to be embedded in the international community, recognized, get the relations back, start the international trade, investments, and so forth. So, so what they said that until the 1st of March, there is this transitional government. It is worrying that they chose the transitional government without negotiation, without consulting with anyone. They just assigned people.
Mhm.
And I mean, if you look at it with, let's say, being extremely benevolent, you would say, okay, it's a transitional. It ends at the 1st of March. in the 1st of March. So probably what comes next could be a democratic elections. But it could be if you look at it with let's say with assuming the bad scenario, it could be just buying some time to consolidate power over state institutions and then use them to create this path dependence effect that you have already established a big presence, and then you know that the police is under your control, the army is under your control, the media is under your control, the political institutions are under your control. So right now you can rig the elections, for example. So we have those two scenarios. Countries seem to be noticing this. That's why they are pushing for 2254. I do believe that even if the West decides to take HTS off of the terrorism list, it needs to be a step for step. So they need to do something, and then they do something, not all of a sudden, because then they will feel there's zero pressure on them to do anything for the people. So that's how it looks like right now.
Okay. And so geopolitically, there is a route, basically energy-wise, through Syria, and there was a different route that basically was connected to Europe. So now it opens a possibility that energy could flow through Syria. Do you see this happening, and do you see it impacting rates?
I I hope it happens. Well, first of all, I think I mean my hopes is that we have a very great opportunity to take Syria out of that axis that it was in and put it in an axis like where there's like liberal democracies, individual freedoms, and international trade, free markets, etc. I think this project, if it happens, so it's what we're talking about is the gas pipeline going from Qatar to Syria, Turkey, and then in Europe. I think there's a big interest. It could be a big interest, but we need also to put in mind how much is the EU looking forward to get rid of fossil fuels and gas. So if they are actually gonna drive up the innovation and just make it as quick as possible, like quicker than the time that Qatar and Turkey need to build the whole thing, then it might be economically not viable. If
Mhm.
there is energy pluralism, so basically not subsidize renewable energy, but let it develop and let there be innovation through competition without subsidy, then it might be viable. Especially right now, I think Europe has seen, and which is something that Poland has been saying for years now, which is finally they have found it out and they believe in it that you cannot depend 100% on Russian gas because they could use it. So that's the main question. Is renewable energy, is it viable or not? It is now in the talks. Turkey and Qatar brought it up. They are talking about it. Syrians seem interested in it. They want anything that lead to investments in in their country. But right now, what we're waiting for is to see if it's viable economically.
Okay, we'll see then. And so, if we were to close up, what do you see being the long-term impact of this conflict, or on the region generally?
There is one positive thing about the 13-year struggle. The positive thing that it took Syria 13 years. uh, when it happened, like throughout the Arab Spring in other countries, if you look at Egypt, if you look at Libya, if you look at Tunisia, other countries, it took almost months sometimes. So it was very quick. People did not struggle much. Syrians did. And because it took them 13 years, so we are talking about a new generation that has been born and raised within war Syria. And those people acknowledge the atrocities of wars. They probably have developed more awareness when it comes to liberty. And it's very important to make to differentiate between when we say Islamism and Islam. Islam is a religion. We want freedom of religion. That's of course we want it for everyone. But when we say Islamism, we mean the enforcement of of political of the political laws derived from a certain religion. Those cannot be dynamic because religion is absolute, and absolutism will not work in a very pluralistic country like Syria. We have almost 40 different religions and ethnicities. So that is the most important thing, because it took them 13 years, and because we also need to know that the big waves of mass migration of refugees going from Syria to everywhere in the world, that has caused also a lot of political, social issues. So I'm counting on that as, let's say, a driver that would lead Europe and the West to consider, let's not accept a new dictator who could lead to this again, especially that this dictator right now, already minorities are scared of him. So I will hope that this will lead them to pressure into actually giving. I'm not saying that you should teach people what they should do. Syrians need to figure out things themselves. They need to find their own constitution, because even in liberal democracies, we don't see the same constitution happening, let's say, in Czech Republic, in Germany, in US, in Canada. Each country has, well, it is liberal democracy, but the systems are a bit different to fit the social structure in their country. So I think what we should give Syrians right now, the population, is an opportunity to have peace, to have livelihoods. First of all, we need to make sure that they won't trade their livelihoods, their freedom for livelihoods. That's one bribe that could be paid. And the second thing is that they need to have some time, because we need to create a new constitution, because the last constitution of Assad made him a godlike person. So there was no entity that could keep his power under check. So I would say this is why I'm optimistic, or let's say cautiously optimistic. And and I cannot say that this is with 100% certainty. It's very uncertain, it's very ambiguous. But as Faisal from IBB said, I like his post. He wrote once, people from the Middle East, like Iraq and Syria, we don't have the privilege of being pessimistic.
Okay. And could you also advise us basically where to learn about these situations, or like what media are reporting quality
So
goods?
I don't have a specific outlet, or what I follow is usually Sky News to a certain extent. I find it like a bit acceptable, but in terms of news related to Syria, I haven't been following up a lot when it comes to Western media. I was like following the Arab-speaking media, because it was the focus, so it was 24/7. But if you can speak Arabic, or you have an AI that could translate in real time, there is Al Arabiya that is funded by Saudi Arabia, and there is Sky News Arabic, which is funded by UAE.
Okay, amazing. So from my end, that would be all. If you want to wrap up from your end, maybe like just pinpoint what is the biggest challenge ahead of, and what people should be looking out for.
So what I would like to say is that first of all, thank you all for being here. I'm actually happy that there's a lot of people who are interested in this, because I know we have been very annoying for the last 13 years. We Syrians, like, all the time talking about our revolution, and you guys are like, when does it end? Well, it kind of ended, but I think it's just started. But now it's hopefully political. I would say that if there is any possibility, because we are talking about population who have lived under dictatorship that controlled not only the livelihoods of the population, but also has controlled, let's say, the narratives we are allowed to believe. And that's a very scary part, because we have now a population, for example, who doesn't know who John Locke is, who doesn't know anything. People don't know anything related to, let's say, what is natural rights, what is liberalism, what is classical liberalism, what is this libertarian. For them, it's like blah blah, something that has no meaning, because they were not allowed to learn these things. If you know anyone from that origin and you see that they are uneducated, I can promise most of them are very good educated, but they have never been exposed to these ideas. So if you could give it 10 minutes just to tell them at least the name of a book they could read. That's what I'm doing right now, just
Mhm.
spreading books, titles everywhere. That would be a great help. More than money. Right now, we need ideas. Money will come later, but now we need ideas.
Okay, amazing. Sounds good. So we can now move on to questions.